At 63, Martha thought she was making the smartest financial decision of her life. After 32 years in the same four-bedroom colonial, she was ready to trade mortgage-free suburban life for a sleek downtown condo. The math seemed simple: sell high, buy low, and pocket the difference for a comfortable retirement. But what Martha couldn't calculate was the true cost of starting over. Within just 18 months, the move that promised financial freedom had become a prison of unexpected expenses, isolation, and regret. And the home she thought was holding her back? It might have been her financial salvation after all. Martha's story isn't unique. Thousands of retirees make this same devastating mistake every year, believing that downsizing automatically equals simplifying. But as Martha would painfully discover, sometimes our homes hold more value than what shows up on a balance sheet. For Martha, the journey toward downsizing began like it does for many, with the best of intentions. Her husband Richard had passed away 3 years earlier after a brief battle with pancreatic cancer. They had raised 2 children in their suburban Boston home, hosted countless holiday gatherings, and created the kind of memories that seemed to live in the very walls. But at 63, Martha found herself rattling around in 2,800 square feet of echoing rooms and outdated fixtures. "I was paying to heat and cool spaces I never even entered anymore," Martha later confessed. Every month, property taxes took a larger bite from her fixed income. The yard work Richard had once handled now meant hiring expensive services she could barely afford. And the stairs, those same stairs her children had thundered up and down for decades, were becoming her daily nemesis as arthritis settled into her knees. It was Martha's financial advisor who first planted the seed. "You're sitting on almost $650,000 of equity," he pointed out during their annual review. "With the Boston market this hot, you could sell, buy something maintenance-free for half that, and significantly pad your retirement accounts." The numbers were compelling. Martha's pension and Social Security provided about $3,800 monthly, enough to live on, but not enough for the occasional splurges or travel she'd always imagined for her retirement years. A home sale could change everything. The seed quickly took root. Martha began browsing listings online, at first casually, then with increasing enthusiasm. When she stumbled across the landings, a newly developed condominium complex overlooking the harbor, something clicked. The photos showed gleaming hardwood floors, stainless steel appliances, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing water views. But it was the amenities that truly captivated her imagination. A concierge desk, fitness center, rooftop garden, and a calendar full of resident social events. "I could make new friends," Martha thought. "People my own age, in similar circumstances." The price tag of $389,000 for a 2-bedroom unit seemed almost too good to be true. With the proceeds from her home sale, she could buy the condo outright and still have over $250,000 to invest. On paper, it was the perfect solution. Martha's children weren't so easily convinced. "Mom, are you sure about this?" her daughter Jen asked during a Sunday phone call. "That house is your security. Dad always said it was the best investment you ever made." Her son Michael was more direct. "You're moving from a paid-off house to take on condo fees. Have you really done the math on this?" But Martha had made up her mind. The suburban home felt like a museum to her past life, not the future she wanted to build for herself. "I need a fresh start," she told her children firmly, "and financially it makes perfect sense." If only she had listened more carefully to their concerns. If only she had asked more questions. If only she had understood what downsizing really meant beyond the simplified math of buy low, sell high. The sale of Martha's suburban home went even better than expected. After just 11 days on the market, she accepted an offer for $675,000, $25,000 above asking price. The bidding war had been fierce, fueled by young families desperate for space in good school districts. At the closing, Martha felt a surge of confidence along with the twinge of nostalgia. "It's just a house," she reminded herself, signing the final papers. "The memories come with me." With the proceeds safely in her account, Martha moved forward on the condo purchase. The sales office at the landings was sleek and professional, with scale models of the development and virtual tours on large screens. The sales associate, Diane, couldn't have been more helpful, walking Martha through every detail of her soon-to-be new home. "And the best part," Diane emphasized, "is that all exterior maintenance is completely covered by your association fees." Martha nodded appreciatively. No more lawn care, no more snow removal, no more worrying about the roof or the gutters. It sounded like exactly what she wanted. What Diane didn't emphasize, and what Martha didn't think to ask about in detail, was exactly what those association fees covered, how much they were, and how often they might increase. The numbers were in the contract, of course, but buried in the fine print of a 60-page document that Martha skimmed rather than scrutinized. It was the first of many oversights that would come back to haunt her. Moving day arrived in early June. Martha had downsized her possessions considerably, selling larger furniture pieces and donating items accumulated over decades of family life. Still, the moving company charged nearly $3,000, significantly more than the estimate, claiming the narrow hallways and elevator restrictions at the landings required additional labor hours. It was an unexpected expense, but Martha brushed it aside. "One-time cost," she told herself. "It'll be worth it." The first few weeks in the new condo were everything Martha had hoped for. The views were spectacular, with sailboats dotting the harbor and sunlight dancing across the water each morning. The concierge staff greeted her by name, and she delighted in exploring every inch of the building's amenities. She even attended a wine and cheese social, meeting several neighbors who seemed friendly and welcoming. "I made the right choice," Martha assured herself, unpacking the last of her kitchen items. "This is exactly the fresh start I needed." Then came the first homeowners association bill. Martha had understood the monthly fee would be $450, covering building maintenance and amenities. What she hadn't fully grasped were the additional assessments. The elevator was being modernized, $1,200 from each unit owner. The lobby was being renovated, another $800. And because the development was only 85% sold, the costs were being spread among fewer owners than originally projected. Martha did some quick mental math. Between the HOA fees and these special assessments, she was now paying nearly $700 monthly for her maintenance-free lifestyle. Far more than she had ever spent on upkeep for her previous home. But the financial surprises were just beginning. Martha received her first property tax bill for the condo and was shocked to discover it was only 20% lower than what she'd paid on her much larger suburban home. The prime downtown location and new construction meant higher assessed values, something she hadn't factored into her calculations. And while her old neighborhood had been stable with predictable tax increases, the rapidly developing harbor area was seeing steeper annual increases. Insurance was another unwelcome surprise. "We require all owners to carry HO6 policies with specific coverage minimums," explained the association manager when Martha questioned the requirements. Her annual premium was nearly double what she'd budgeted, with flood insurance an additional requirement due to the harbor location. By the 4-month mark, Martha's carefully planned budget was showing serious strain. The $250,000 she had set aside from her home sale remained untouched. She had promised herself this would be her never-touch emergency fund and future legacy for her children. But her monthly expenses were consistently exceeding her fixed income by nearly $600. For the first time in decades, Martha found herself dipping into savings to cover regular expenses. It was an unsustainable situation, and the financial strain was beginning to take an emotional toll. The social life Martha had envisioned also failed to materialize as she had hoped. Yes, there were building events and gatherings, but the connections remained superficial. Many residents were significantly younger professionals who used the building as a convenient downtown base, not retirees looking for community. Others were seasonal occupants or investors who rented their units short-term. In my old neighborhood, I knew everyone's name, their children, their pets, Martha confided to her daughter during a phone call. Here, people nod politely in the elevator, but rarely stop to chat. The convenience of downtown living came with unexpected drawbacks too. Parking was limited to one space per unit, with guest parking often unavailable. Martha's children found visiting more difficult than anticipated, especially with young grandchildren in tow. The vibrant nightlife of the Harbor District meant weekend noise often continued well past midnight, a stark contrast to the quiet suburban streets she had left behind. By the 6-month mark, Martha was beginning to question her decision, but pride kept her from voicing these doubts to her children or friends. After all, she had made this choice with such confidence, brushing aside their concerns. Admitting she might have been wrong felt impossible. Instead, Martha began looking for ways to supplement her income. At 63, with an administrative background and 15 years since her last job interview, the prospects were daunting. Nevertheless, she updated her resume and began applying for part-time positions. The responses were few and far between. When interviews did materialize, Martha could sense the unspoken age discrimination despite her qualifications. After 2 months of searching, she finally secured a position at a local museum gift shop, 20 hours weekly at just above minimum wage. It wasn't the retirement she had envisioned for herself. Standing on her feet for 5-hour shifts aggravated her arthritis. The schedule was unpredictable, making it difficult to plan visits with family or maintain any regular activities. "I'm not working for fulfillment," Martha admitted to herself. "I'm working because I can't afford the lifestyle I thought would be more affordable." The winter brought new challenges. While Martha no longer worried about shoveling snow or heating a large home, the condo presented its own problems. The large windows that provided spectacular summer views also created significant heat loss. Her utility bills were nearly as high as they had been in her much larger suburban home. The building's heating system was controlled centrally, meaning Martha often found her unit too warm or too cold, with little ability to adjust to her preferences. When a pipe burst in the unit above hers, causing water damage to her ceiling and walls, Martha discovered another downside of condo living: navigating insurance claims between her policy, the neighbor's policy, and the association's master policy. The repairs dragged on for weeks, with contractors coming and going at hours not of her choosing. Although insurance covered most of the costs, Martha was still responsible for her $1,000 deductible, another unexpected expense. Meanwhile, the social isolation was deepening. In her old neighborhood, Martha had been part of a tight-knit community built over decades. Neighbors checked on each other during storms, collected mail during vacations, and gathered for impromptu backyard barbecues. At the landings, such connections were rare. The transient nature of many residents made forming meaningful friendships difficult. The organized social events began to feel forced rather than genuine. Martha found herself spending more evenings alone than she ever had in her suburban home. The psychological impact was becoming as significant as the financial strain. Martha had always prided herself on her independence. Richard had handled most of their financial decisions during their marriage, but after his death, she had committed to taking control of her future. The downsizing decision had been part of that commitment, a declaration of her ability to make smart choices for her new life chapter. Now, as the evidence mounted that the decision had been flawed, Martha struggled with feelings of failure and self-doubt. Did I make this mistake because I didn't understand enough about real estate? Would Richard have prevented this if he were still here? What will my children think when they realize how badly I've miscalculated? These questions haunted her late at night, as she lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the building. By the one-year anniversary of her move, Martha was facing some hard truths. The condo that was supposed to simplify her life had complicated it in ways she never anticipated. The financial freedom she had sought remained elusive, and the fresh start she had craved now felt like a disconnection from everything familiar and comforting. During a rare Sunday dinner at her son Michael's home, the facade finally cracked. "How's the condo, Mom?" he asked innocently, passing the salad bowl. Martha tried to muster her usual enthusiastic response, but something in her expression gave her away. Michael set down his fork. "Mum, what's really going on?" The tears came suddenly and unexpectedly. Years of stoic independence crumbled as Martha confessed everything. The financial strain, the isolation, the part-time job she'd been hiding from them, the growing certainty that she had made a terrible mistake. Her son and daughter-in-law exchanged glances but said nothing, simply letting her speak until the story was fully told. When she finished, Michael reached across the table and took her hand. "Mom, why didn't you tell us? We could have helped you figure this out sooner." "I was embarrassed," Martha admitted. "You both warned me, and I was so certain I knew better." "Being wrong isn't a sin, Mom," Michael said gently. "Not asking for help when you need it is." That conversation marked a turning point. With her children's support, Martha began seriously evaluating her options. Selling the condo after only a year would mean taking a significant financial hit, especially after factoring in realtor commissions and closing costs. The market had cooled slightly since her purchase, meaning she might not even recover her full investment. But staying meant continuing on an unsustainable financial path, one that was rapidly eroding both her savings and her quality of life. Martha's daughter suggested a compromise, renting out the condo instead of selling immediately. "The rental market is strong," Jen explained. "You might be able to cover your monthly costs and even generate a small positive cash flow while you figure out your next step." It wasn't a perfect solution, but it offered a way forward. With her children's help, Martha researched rental management companies and prepared her unit for tenants. Within 6 weeks, a young professional couple signed a 2-year lease at a rate that would cover Martha's mortgage, HOA fees, and most of her property taxes. The question remained, where would Martha live? The answer came from an unexpected source. A former neighbor from her suburban community had recently lost her husband and was struggling with the upkeep of her own large home. "I have 4 bedrooms and only use 1, she told Martha over coffee. "Why don't you rent one from me? We can keep each other company and share some expenses." The arrangement wasn't what Martha had ever envisioned for her retirement years. It wasn't the independent lifestyle she had sought when downsizing, but it addressed her 2 most pressing needs: affordable housing and human connection. 18 months after her grand downsizing experiment began, Martha found herself moving again. This time, into a rented bedroom in her former neighborhood. Her carefully planned retirement had been upended, her financial security damaged, though not destroyed, and her confidence shaken. But as she unpacked her now twice downsized possessions, Martha felt something she hadn't experienced in months: a sense of peace. Sometimes the smartest financial decisions aren't just about the numbers, she reflected. They're about understanding what truly makes your life rich. Martha's story isn't unique. Across America, thousands of retirees make similar decisions each year, seduced by the promise of simplified living and financial freedom through downsizing. While it works beautifully for some, others discover too late that they've traded one set of problems for another, often more costly set. The lessons from Martha's experience are valuable for anyone considering such a move. First, Understand that downsizing isn't automatically cost-effective. The equation isn't as simple as selling high and buying low. Hidden costs abound, from HOA fees and special assessments to higher insurance premiums and property taxes in desirable locations. Before making any decision, create a comprehensive budget that includes every possible expense associated with your new lifestyle. Then add 20% for the inevitable surprises. Second, recognize that the value of community can't be purchased or quickly recreated. The social connections built over decades in an established neighborhood represent a form of wealth that doesn't appear on any balance sheet. When considering a move, think beyond the physical space to the human ecosystem you're leaving behind. How will you replace those connections? Is the new environment likely to provide similar opportunities for meaningful interaction? Third, test before you leap. Martha might have benefited from renting a similar condo for 6 months before selling her home, giving her a realistic preview of both the benefits and drawbacks of the lifestyle. While not always practical, even a short-term rental in your target area can provide valuable insights that glossy brochures and staged model units never will. Fourth, involve trusted advisors and family members in your decision-making process. Martha dismissed her children's concerns too quickly, assuming their opposition stemmed from sentiment rather than valid financial considerations. A neutral financial advisor with no stake in the transaction might have helped her see the flaws in her plan before they became costly mistakes. Fifth, understand that retirement housing isn't a one-time decision, but an evolving process. What works at 65 may not work at 75 or 85. The most successful retirees build flexibility into their housing plans, creating options rather than painting themselves into corners. Perhaps most importantly, Martha's story reminds us that financial decisions are rarely just about money. They're about lifestyle, identity, comfort, and community. The true cost of Martha's downsizing wasn't measured in dollars alone, but in the loss of connection and independence that had defined her life for decades. As retirement approaches, many of us focus intensely on the numbers: the size of our nest egg, our monthly income, the equity in our homes. These calculations matter, of course, but equally important are the less tangible assets we've built: our social networks, our familiar routines, our sense of belonging in a community. Martha eventually found her way to a workable solution, though not the one she had initially envisioned. 3 years after her downsizing disaster, she and her former neighbor had settled into a comfortable co-living arrangement that benefited them both financially and socially. The condo continued to generate rental income, slowly rebuilding some of the financial security Martha had compromised. And the hard-earned wisdom from her experience became a gift she shared freely with friends and family facing similar decisions. "I thought I was simplifying my life," Martha often tells them, "but I was actually trading familiar complications for unfamiliar ones and paying a premium for the privilege." Her advice to others considering downsizing is straightforward. Move towards something, not just away from something. Understand exactly what you're gaining and what you're giving up. And remember that the true value of a home isn't measured in square footage or market appraisals, but in how it supports the life you want to live. If this story resonated with you, give the video a like and subscribe to Goldprint, your blueprint for smarter golden years. We share powerful, real-life retirement stories every single day. Have you thought about downsizing? What worries you the most? Drop a comment below. Your experience might help someone avoid a costly mistake.